Welcome back everyone, and today I have for you a Mount Lavin on the best political / social players ever on the challenge. Now, I think that both with political and social, they kind of go hand in hand once in the challenge because you need friends and you need people on your side to get your agenda above all the others. So that's why I kind of combine them. And so with that in mind, let's go into the men's Mount Lavin that I have, the 4 picks. And before we get to the 4 picks, I have some honorable mentions. The first one I want to talk about is Darrell. Now, Darrell is a player that won his first 4 challenge seasons, and that is a very unique and impressive feat that can't be done just by brute force. You need to have some political and social savvy within the game to help you get that far. He didn't see a single elimination in that span except for the final elimination in fresh meat. Now, I think Darrell benefited by being on the challenge in an era where it was mainly team formats, and he was such a physically gifted player that nobody wanted to throw him into elimination in case of losing him because he was such an important part of the challenge. And I think that because he didn't have to truly make big moves or rely on his social or political game to get him too far because he was never really in danger within that span, I think that's what ultimately kept him off the Mount Lavin for this type of theme. The next one I have up here is Shane as an honorable mention. I think Shane is a great player. He made it very far within every season of the challenge he ever did. He was also the brains behind the Lavender Ladies. The problem with Shane's game is that he was never able to finesse his way into a finals, and I think that ultimately hinders his chances of actually being up on this mountain and surpassing people that I feel deserve it more than him. But I felt he needed an honorable mention in this category. But now let's go into the 4 players that I have up on this Mount Lavin, and the first one I'm going to be talking about, of course, is Kenny. Now, Kenny ran 8 seasons of the challenge, making 7 finals out of those 8 seasons. During those 8 seasons, he only really saw 5 eliminations, and that is impressive. And he wasn't even that good in eliminations, especially one-on-one eliminations. So he really had to fall back on his political and social skills. He really ran the house in those 8 seasons that he was on the challenge. And I think something that really peaks out is that on the island in particular, he was one of the biggest D-bags on that season alongside his buddy Bananas. However, even with making jokes when really it was belittling and being rude and misogynistic to women, he was never really in danger of losing his key. He actually had to make deals on behalf of his friend Bananas to where Evelyn wouldn't steal his key, and that he would make a deal using his leverage and social game with Derek to get Evelyn on their side and steal Dunbar's key instead of Bananas, and then they would run the finals together as a foursome and win, which they did. So it just proves the fact that Kenny's social game and political game was on such another level than, say, the rest of the cast during his time on the seasons before he got banned. And speaking of Bananas in that last segment, let's go into the next face on this Mount Lavin, and of course it has to be Bananas. You can't win 7 seasons of the challenge just by brute force. You have to actually be somewhat political and social to get there. Bananas, early on in his challenge career, was struggling. He was out early, but he decided to make the social move to become friends with Kenny and learn and have him be his mentor to when Kenny got banned. That's when Bananas really took and mastered the political and social landscape of the game, winning 5 challenge seasons up to Rivals 3, and then post the Rivals 3 win, that's when his social and political game really took a hit as the new blood and the young bucks really wanted to take a shot at Bananas since he was the most winningest person on the challenge at that point. But even with on Dirty 30 Corey pointing out Bananas and saying you're #1 on my hit list, Bananas still made it to the final 4 of that challenge season, and it took a couple of years to get a resurgence and get a squad back in the house. But we saw in Total Madness, he had full control of the house. He even made a truce with Wes, his biggest rival within the game, and he made it to the finals and won. Speaking of Wes, I have to say that Wes deserves a spot on this Mount Lavin as one of the best political and social people. He started out his challenge career going into 5 eliminations, having to win and making it to the finals. But once he was able to get a stronghold in the social and political game. There was no stopping Wes. Yes, he had to go into a ton of eliminations, but the seasons that really pointed out Wes's strategic and political and social games was that of X's 2, where he was basically running the house, got Bananas out, and once he got Bananas out, there was really no rivalry within that game. He even made buddies with Bananas' best friend, Leroy, and it wasn't until Battle of the Exile, where Bananas and Nani came back, that Wes was in trouble and got eliminated in that season. Then there was a big hiatus that Wes had within the challenge seasons, the main seasons at least, until he was back on War of the Worlds, where he was able to use his social and political skills to get one Bananas out early and only see one elimination. Despite his reputation within the game, he made the friends, he made the social skills, he made the political moves to get to the finals, and within a strongly contested and tough finals of War of the Worlds, he was able to make it to 3rd place. The final name on this list, of course, has to be Mark Long, the godfather of reality TV. Now, Mark benefited by being on the challenge. In his first 3 seasons, there was no eliminations. He only saw 1 elimination in his whole challenge career, but we'll get to that. He won his first 2 seasons of the challenge. He could have won his 3rd in Battle of the Sexes 2. However, he cut a deal with his other teammates that he would lose it on purpose. They could sacrifice him. Then they split the money between the 4 of them equally, which they did. Then in the Duel 2, he made the same exact deal, where he made a deal with Brad and Evan that despite who came in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, that once they got all the money together, they would split it up evenly between the 3 of them, which they did. And then there's also talks that in Battle of the X's, when he went into his only elimination in his entire challenge career, that he would go in there and lose to Bananas on purpose so that he would get a cut of his money. It just shows that Mark didn't use his social and political game to leverage out on challenge wins and notoriety, but mainly he did it for the almighty dollar. And as we know from watching the challenge, cash is king. Now, those are my picks for the men's Mount Lavin of political and social players. Now let's move on to the women's Mount Lavin. But first, I have a few honorable mentions, and my first one is, of course, Cam. Now, Cam is strong socially, politically, and also physically, and in her small sample size of her challenge career so far, she has made some strong political moves. Final Reckoning, where she was able to get everybody to vote the way she wanted so that her and Kaylee had the power vote of that episode. I thought that was beautiful, that was brilliant, and I think that if and when her challenge career is completely over, that she is going to be up on this Mount Lavin 100% with a few wins under her belt. And then my other honorable mention is Jen. Now, just like Wes and Bananas, she didn't start off as a strong political and social player, as she saw a lot of eliminations in Inferno 3. But in the back end of her challenge career, she saw 4 finals out of 5 seasons. She made it really far in those seasons, playing both sides of the house. She played flawlessly in Cutthroat, Rivals, and Fresh Meat 2. However, when it came down to actually putting rubber to the pavement, she could not cash those in for wins, and I think that's just showing that she didn't have enough political status to put herself in the right situation for a challenge win. But I think she did a fantastic job on her seasons of the challenge. But now let's move on to the 4 players that I have up on this Mount Lavin. And the first one, of course, is Coral Smith. Now, like I mentioned with Darrell, he benefited from going on the challenge seasons in an era where if you were a physically gifted person, then you were making it to the finals. You weren't seeing a ton of eliminations. For the women, that was actually a hindrance because back in the day, they were genderless eliminations. That means men could go up against men, women could go up against women, but then that also means men could go up against women. So more likely than not, women were being voted in more times than the men were, except for Coral, who was able to use her political and social skills and mix that with her performance and the way she held herself as a leader in the daily challenges, that she was able to be the last woman standing on her team in the Gauntlet finals and in the Inferno finals. And she made it to the finals in her first 4 challenge seasons, winning her first season out in Battle of the Seasons 2002. She made it to the next 3 finals, and she would have won more seasons of the challenge if it wasn't for all the injuries and the DQs and the quitting that she did in the final couple of seasons of her challenge career, but she played a flawless political and social game to get herself to be the last woman standing on her team. The next person I want to be talking about is Veronica. Now, you don't get the name Queen V for nothing. On her season of the challenge, Veronica politically and socially made her way to 4 finals and won 3 of them, and her social and political peak was in Inferno, where she was nominated to go into 2 eliminations, but she was able to convince her team to lose those daily challenges so that she could win the 2 lifesavers. And she convinced them to throw in Katie, who she didn't like, and she made her sound like a weak link and try to get her eliminated before the finals. Also leveraged her showmances within her seasons, like on the Ruins, and also after an hiatus, she came back for Dirty 30, and she was able to use Brittany's burn vote, quote unquote burn vote, on Leroy to get Leroy voted into the elimination against Hunter, and she was doing that since the beginning of her challenge career to the end. The next person I have up on this Mount Lavin is Ashley. Now, Ashley knows how to make friends, and she's a bit of a social chameleon. Now, she was able to make friends easily on her challenge seasons and make it far if she wasn't quitting for the airport, losing her bags, or anything like that. In Invasion of the Champs, Ashley was a part of the Lavender Ladies Alliance and was able to convince Amanda that going up against Nicole head-to-head was better for their game as the Lavender Ladies than, say, Ashley going up against Nicole in that elimination. That got her to the finals and to her first win. Then we fast forward to Final Reckoning, where Amanda didn't want to vote in Hunter and Ashley into the elimination, and it cost her ultimately that challenge win, as her and Zach were absolutely destroying that season, and it got Ashley to another challenge win. Then we move on to War of the Worlds 2, where Ashley was asked to be part of the Kara's cult, despite Kara and the Lavender Ladies Alliance being at odds with one another and butting heads for multiple seasons of the challenge since the formation of the Lavender Ladies. And finally, the person I think is one of the most dangerous and one of the best political and social players in challenge history, and that is Susie. Now, Susie, in her challenge history, has never been eliminated from a challenge season. Now, Susie, if you look at her and watch her season, she is definitely not a physically gifted challenger, and she really used her social and political skills within the challenge season to make it far and get to multiple finals of the challenge. We look into Gauntlet 2, where she never faced an elimination despite having cross-team alliances, and got her first challenge win. In Inferno 3, she won 3 life shields, and she won 1 elimination on her way to another finals appearance. And then in the Ruins, she made friends with the JEK Alliance along with Derek, and she was the last woman standing on her champions team. And yes, she went into 3 eliminations that season. 1, she got voted into the elimination early on in that season, but the final 2 eliminations that she faced off against were way late into the season, and she had to go into the elimination because she was the last woman on her team, and she beasted them out, and she won that challenge final. And I think that if you watch Susie's challenge seasons, you just see how politically and socially gifted she was, and how she maneuvered through those seasons to make multiple finals and multiple wins in her challenge career. But that is it for this episode. What do you think about my picks on these Mount Lavins? Let me know that in the comment section below. Which out of the 8 people that I have up here is your favorite player? Let me know that in the comment section below. And is there somebody that I missed that you think should be possibly put up on these mountains? Or is there somebody on these mountains that you think definitely does not deserve to be up there? Let me know that in the comment section below. But thank you so much for watching. While you're down there, hit that like and subscribe button. I'll be back really, really soon with more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.